The education of our children is very important. And when we focus on education, we know our children have a higher degree of success. They don't get into the trouble that they would get into if they did not have the proper education. Now, take a brother by the name of Dr. Steve Perry. He is an educator in our community. He has been featured on programs like Hot 97 and CNN's Black in America. Now, there's a short clip I want you to see how this brother run his school.
Good morning.
Every morning at 7:30, you can find Steve Perry here.
How's everything?
He's the principal of Capital Preparatory Magnet School in Hartford, Connecticut.
What's up, Chief?
Each and every day, he and Vice Principal Rich Bagansky greet each student as they walk through Capital's doors.
Good morning, Mr. Perry.
Steve Perry founded the school 4 years ago.
How we doing, sir?
He has the highest expectations of all his students. It's the Capital Prep way.
Those earrings out, please.
For Perry, being a principal is all about the details.
Mr. Carter, you gotta be kidding me. That's the fastest you can move, son?
From uniform inspections
Where's your blazer, son? Okay. Having it's not enough, right? Put it on.
to morning staff meetings.
I know there are quite a few who've not done curriculum mapping.
It all matters.
No, I don't, Mr.
Then keep your mouth shut.
I didn't even do anything.
Just keep it shut.
Why so strict?
The details matter.
Why?
That's what they're there for.
Wait, your shirt's tucked in, it matters?
It absolutely matters.
Why?
Because it's a presentation of yourself. No one's gonna be happier to hand you a diploma than I would be. Or more hurt if you don't get one.
And Perry's high expectations
Close the door, please.
achieve the near impossible, an almost 0% dropout rate.
Now, when I saw that clip, highly impressed with that, we had to talk to this brother, and here's that interview. Now, we're joined today by Dr. Steve Perry. Now, many of you probably seen him on Black in America. Maybe some of you have seen him on Hot 97 and other publications, speaking about education. And many times we have done many videos about education, how our children are going from school to prison, how the police officers are treating our children like enemy combatants in schools. And this is something we're very concerned with. And Dr. Steve Perry has a 100% graduation rate for his kids. And what I saw with his kids, I was just impressed. I loved it. I loved the uniforms. I loved everything. So, Dr. Steve Perry, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much, brother. Let me just do a quick correction. We have 100% of our graduates go on to four-year colleges. Sometimes people connect the two. If a kid moves, then you don't have 100% of your graduates. You don't have 100% of them who graduate. So I just want to make that distinction. But yes, 100% of our graduates do go on to four-year colleges. Always have for over 10 years now.
Right, and that is something that's great that any educator can say about their children. That's a testament of the programs that you set forth. But before we get into speaking about educating our children, how did you fall in love with education?
Well, I recognized very early on that I wasn't going to make it to the NFL. My spot on the Cowboys bench was not going to happen. So I had to find something else that I do. And one of the things that I do well is work hard to get our community to where it needs to be, specifically working as somebody who had run a homeless shelter and had started a not-for-profit organization that sent kids to college. So it was just a matter of time before I ended up starting school.
So how did you do your first school? Like, was it expensive to start a school, and how many students were your very first school?
So the first school, excuse me, what I did was, in Connecticut, they have magnet schools and charter schools, and we filled out essentially an application, which at that point was probably 200 and something pages, and submitted it to the state of Connecticut. We got approved. State of Connecticut, the citizens of the state of Connecticut provided us with the opportunity to operate our first school, which is in Hartford, Connecticut. That's the Capital Preparatory Magnet School. We did that for 10 years. And then I got sick and tired of turning kids away because the school district was too focused on making sure that these mini prisons stayed open as opposed to these highly successful magnet schools. So my colleagues and I decided to peel out and start our own thing. And so the next school that we started is Capital Prep Harbor in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a charter school. Again, we applied through the state, and then we started one in New York called Capital Prep Harlem, which is a charter school in New York that we started with my good friend, Brother Sean Combs.
Okay, so that's the one that Puffy had spearheaded, correct? With
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Okay. So how many children normally apply to get into your schools?
Well, in our final year in Hartford, after 10 years of running schools, 2,700 for about 100 seats. The first year we opened a school here in Bridgeport, over 1,000 for 250 seats. And just this past year in Harlem, this is all with no advertising, just so you know. There's no advertising. It's just word of mouth. 1,500 families applied for less than 100 seats or 80 seats in Harlem.
So when they're making these applications to get into your schools, are there certain things you're looking for grade-wise, or maybe their story? I mean, what is it that you're looking for?
All they have to do is put their name, address, and grade.
And so they picked kind of like a lottery, maybe?
It's a lottery.
It's a lottery. Okay, so I saw that you require the children to wear shirt and tie. I saw that, especially like a lot of the males. Why did you go to a shirt and tie and blazer uniform?
Well, the school model actually came from a lot of the West Indian families who were in Hartford. We had a lot of Jamaicans in West Hartford. And when we were starting the school, we started it with a good amount of Jamaican parents. So the Jamaican parents that were there said, we want a school that's like back home. And they described to me what that school is and how the highest form of dress is what these children wear. And I said to one of the parents, I said, I get you, but it's hot during the summer and we're a year-round school. You want kids to wear ties and blazers during the summer? And she looked at me, she said, Dr. Perry, I'm Jamaican. It's hot all year. And that was the last question I had about wearing ties and sweaters and the like. And she talked about how there was such a sense of pride that they had back home where somebody could tell what school you went to by the colors you wore. And that's something that you were proud of. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to capitalize on what our community already had, which was a sense of pride, whether it be the Nation of Islam or some other groups who talk about the highest form of dress. I'm dressed down today because we're literally building another school and we're on break. And so this is break attire. But as you well know, when I'm on the grind, when I'm working, I'm dressed like I'm working. I'm not saying anybody else got to work like I work, but like I work. So we want our children to be dressed appropriately for everywhere they're supposed to be. I'm not here to try and make people from other generations or different communities feel like the only way to be successful is through wearing a shirt and tie. But at our school, the only way to be successful is to wear a shirt and tie and blazer.
And that's a good way to approach that, because we both know you have to have a respectable dress. You just have to. I mean, some of these kids feel that it's okay to walk around with their pants, off their behind. And, you see some of these schools, the girls dress like they come from the strip clubs. I mean, it's horrible. And when I saw, the way your children were dressed, I was just so impressed. I was like, I'm going to ask you this question. When are you opening up a school in the Houston area?
Well, we love Houston. And I'll tell you, you guys have some really, really good kids. But one of the things that you have that I think is a blessing, you have some visionary pastors. You have a number of pastors who've looked around and said, hold on a second. I can't even find a grown person to read the morning announcements without stumbling. It's not because they're unintelligent. It's because our schools have failed to teach them to read in the way in which they should. So why then am I going to keep sending my parishioners' children and my parishioners to schools that do not take care of my African American and Latino and in many cases poor parishioners? Why don't we start our own schools? And so I've actually been contacted by pastors in the greater Houston area who've shown some interest in working together. We're not now ready to do that, but I am very open to making sure that we do all that we can to make sure that we support those brothers and sisters who get it and who want more school choice, not less.
Yeah, now you mentioned school choice, and I remember hearing Donald Trump and Betsy DeVos speak about that, about school choice. Do you support their position on that?
I support their position on that. Yeah, I do. I don't support Donald Trump, but I agree. And I don't even know that this is his position. I know that this is the position he's taken up as of late. We were in the school choice years before Donald Trump was. Anybody ever heard of Brown versus Board of Education? Magnet schools, anybody ever vocational technical schools? I mean, these are things that we've all been doing, and you know, like I do, how many black parents do you know who, or have heard of, who send their kids to their sister's school, their aunt's school, so they get them in a bus and put them in a car and take them to another school? Our community's always supported school choice. Now that Donald Trump supports it, that doesn't mean I support it less. I mean, that's just crazy. It's our only hope. Our only hope is to get our kids and our parents school choice. Middle class people do it all the time. We gotta rise above whether or not one party or the other support something that we support. Because truth be told, the teachers union and the NAACP and the Democrats have been doing all they can to send our kids back to some of the lowest performing school systems in America.
Right about that. I so agree with you on that. Like I said, I don't support Donald Trump, but I personally believe in this. We need to support our interest, and school choice is in our interest in the black community because, like you stated, yes, they want to send us to the lowest performing schools. Most of the teachers are either Caucasian, possibly female, and they don't care about our kids in the way we should. I'm not saying they don't care to educate. Let me make sure not to say that. But
you listen, brother. You know, we spend so much time trying to pussyfoot around this thing, trying to tap dance around it. But it is what it is. The results are the results. I mean, they are what they are. You look and you see that among the top performing schools in the state of Texas, almost 70% of them are schools of choice. What are we talking about here? Why are we going to sit here and act like it isn't what it is? You know, the problem that we're faced with is that we're trying to. I recently went to Cuba, and my family and we took students. So our students, my kids go to my school, my sons go to my schools. So obviously, when my school goes somewhere, my kids are part of it. Whatever. But you know, so many people talked about how much ingenuity they have with regards to having these old cars running. And my reaction to that was, why don't y'all fix the system that only lets you buy old cars in the first place? That's the problem. You should not be up underneath a car that's 70 years old trying to make that joint run every day. We have a school system that was founded 300 plus years ago. 300, almost 400 years ago. And we keep trying to prop this thing up by saying, well, let's just pour more money into it. That's what they're doing down in Cuba. They pour more money into these cars. And yeah, they run. But if you've ever driven an old car and you've driven a new car, they ain't the same. Now, it's nice to have a little classic car in the garage. You know, you take out with your wife, you want to go somewhere and do that's fun. I got one of those. Mm-hmm. But for every day, nah, give me something that's newer. Give me something that's got power steering in it, disc brakes, fuel injection, and air conditioning. Give me that. We have a school system that's horse and buggy. Literally, the technology of the day when the schools that our children currently attend were started, this very model, horse and buggy, pot-belly stoves were heating our homes. This is what our life looked like. Most people lived on farms or got their food from some way, their income somewhere from an agrarian experience. Less than 1% of America's population currently earn the lion's share of their income from an agrarian experience. So why are we still running on a horse and buggy agrarian schedule? Why? Because of jobs. Because when you and I, take our kids and encourage other kids to leave failed schools, they begin to shut those schools down. That becomes a problem because the teachers associations or the teachers unions start to lose dues. When they lose dues, they lose juice. When they lose juice, they can't make politicians support what they want. Now, why the national chapter of the NAACP is caught up in this foolishness is beyond me, because they're the ones who led the fight against busing kids to schools that were underperforming in the first place, that were neighborhood schools, forcing kids into failed schools in the first place. So why they've shifted their commitment is beyond me. But I can say this, on the local level here in Connecticut, our NAACP has had our back from day one and still has our back. It's just the nationals that have lost their minds. So we don't need to tiptoe around this. We need to call a spade, because our kids are dying as a result of this foolishness.
Well, I definitely agree with you, because I know I have a lot of people that follow me. I get an email. I'm a great teacher. I love my children. There's a lot of times when I'm talking like that, I'm covering my bases.
No, and I'm saying to you, can't. Here's the deal.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk to me, if you said, I know black people who steal. Okay, you probably do. Does that mean all black people steal? No, it doesn't mean that. But I'm not going to sit and take up for criminals either. And similarly, if you say, look, I've seen schools and charter schools that have failed. Okay, you're right. Doesn't hurt my feelings. Those people who are so sensitive about whether or not you're talking about them, maybe they need to look at themselves. If your data doesn't say that you are getting your kids to grow, then you're not doing your job. And if you don't like that, do your job or get another job.
I agree with that 100%. Now, I heard you say something earlier that really piqued my interest, and I mentioned this before, that I feel our kids need to go to year-round school, and you mentioned your kids go to year-round school, correct?
They absolutely do.
Okay, tell me about that schedule, because in the real world, you don't get months off. You constantly staying busy.
So we have a month off with 4 weeks off a year. Our school year typically begins, so we shifted our school year just a little bit to accommodate our schools in New York. The schools in New York end their school year at the end of June. We used to start our school year here in Connecticut on July 5, but we couldn't go to the end of June and July 5. There would be no break at all. So what we do is the first week in August all the way to the last week in June. So we get July off.
Okay, now do you have any breaks in between that, or it's just straight school Monday through Friday?
No, we have breaks. I mean, we have breaks in between it. We're public schools, so we have breaks. When we were in Hartford, there was a large Latino population, so we got 3 Kings Day off because of the religious holidays there. Plus, we got Christmas off. Some of the other holidays. But what we don't have are a bunch of silly breaks. Like we don't have winter recess, spring recess, spring break, all that foolishness. No. We go to school 201 days a year.
I love to hear that, because the kids in a normal schedule, they sit out from the end of school, at least a lot of schools here in Texas, in maybe the first week or so in June, and then they go back maybe about mid-August, toward the third week or so in August, and then you got to literally reteach them all over again what they learned all year from last year.
There's that. Plus, here's what's also important. You asked me how many people apply to our schools. Our schools are the most popular schools in the districts where they are, period. What our community is saying is that we want year-round college preparatory schools. So if that's what they want, if the public wants that, why is the public only getting that in a couple schools? That's ridiculous. When the public says this is what we want, give the public what they want. This is a democracy, and as such, the public should not have to work this hard to get what it wants. Further, we recognize that over 100 years of research has shown us that there's something called summer learning slide. Meaning that, let's say that coming into the school year, getting out of school year, your child got a C in algebra. You give her 8 to 10 weeks of no algebra, and then you bring her into geometry the next year in September. You're going to spend the first 3 to 4 months reteaching a good portion of that. That 3 to 4 months takes you August, September, October, November. Guess what happens? Break. You go on break for Thanksgiving. You come back after break. You start the new information right around Thanksgiving. Then what happens next? Big break for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going. You take a week off, come week or two, depending upon when he follows, and then you start back up in second week in January, go from January to February. Some schools have a winter recess in February. So every 6 weeks, you got a break. Even if you're really good at this algebra thing or this math thing, the breaks, the stops and starts, hinder a child's ability to continue to learn. If you're training for a marathon, you don't take 10 weeks off in the middle of your training. That's crazy. And then the final part is, we understand that we're educating students whose parents, for the most part, do not have the resources to put them in summer camps. My son, one of my sons is one of my wife and one of our sons is at a YMCA camp. Now that's a pretty inexpensive camp. Typically, it's 2 weeks, $2,000. That's real money. And so you do 10 weeks. That's $10,000. That's just the summer. That's an inexpensive camp. You understand?
Yes.
There are more expensive camps, like some tennis camps and some AAU programs. You know, they're AAU.
Oh, yeah, I definitely know.
There are weekends that you can send a kid to AAU. You got to drop $500. Easy.
Yeah, my daughter stopped doing AAU. She doing a USA track, which is a whole lot better AAU.
But it was costing you, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
And if you don't have it, then you can't spend it. So what's your child supposed to do? Your daughter's supposed to sit up in the house, lock the doors for 8 hours a day while you and your wife don't answer the phone, don't talk to nobody, don't watch bad television, don't get on the internet. Come on, man. So she does nothing productive and read a book. Okay. What is she, a monk? Nobody's doing that. Adult or child.
Right.
So we have a school system that's not working to our advantage. We have a school model that's not working to our advantage as black people and poor people in particular, of all colors. We need to put in place modern day school models that we have seen that have worked. And we got to take the teachers union and get them out of the way of what the parents want. It's my child, my choice.
I agree with that statement. What you said, my child, my choice. So if you were supposed to start, let's say right here in Texas, we wanted to start a school because that's something I'm passionate about. I said, let me get the funds in my hands. I would like to do that one day. So if you have a school, let's say maybe 50 to 100 students, something small, start off that small. How much in average, just ballpark, would it cost to get that running?
It should not cost you anything because you would be a public school. And so you, as long as you can attract the students, should get the money that comes with the students. See, one of the problems that we have is that you'll hear people say that the charter schools are taking money away from the traditional schools or the neighborhood schools, or they call them the public schools. They're both public schools, so they call them one public and not public because they want to play up something, make the charter school seem like it's somehow exclusive and private when that's not the case. So it's a traditional school and a charter school. That's the difference. The reason that money sometimes leaves the traditional schools is because the kid who the money was collected for doesn't go to that school anymore. So if you went to Texas A&M originally, let's say you went to A&M, and you got a Pell Grant, and your parents paid tuition, and then you transferred to SMU, would you leave the tuition back at A&M?
No.
It would go to SMU, right?
Right.
Same thing with charter schools. If your child was supposed to go to the neighborhood school up the block, and she doesn't go there, why would the state send the money where she is not? But for the fact that they're trying to keep that building open so they keep the grown people employed. If your daughter isn't in that school, why should the money go to that school? It should go where she is. So were you, like I, to be a social entrepreneur and say, well, I think I could run schools like I did and do. So we want to start our own school. You would apply through the state of for a charter where you approved. The state would grant you the amount of money that you would receive for the total number of students that you have. So if you have 50 students, whatever the amount of money that comes with the 50 students is, you get.
Now, would you have to erect a building? That's what I'm speaking about on the money aspect.
And the answer is I don't know in Texas, because sometimes what happens is some communities will allow you a public building, or let's say you go to a church. The pastor may say, "Hey, we have a celebration hall over here that we'll let you use for $1." There are a lot of ways to get this thing done. Yes, some people do erect buildings, and they cost what buildings cost: 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million, whatever that is. That's what they cost. You're building a school, not a house. You're building something that's at least 20,000 square feet, at least. Our school in Hartford was 42.5 15 years ago, and it is 78,000 square feet. So it's what it costs, whatever it is per. Excuse me, but do not let that deter you, because again, you may be able to find partners. You may be able to get on a college campus. Paul Quinn may have some room on their campus, or another HBCU. What's another HBCU in Texas?
We got Prairie View.
Prairie View. That's what I was trying to think of. Prairie View.
Yeah.
So Prairie View may say, "Hey, you know what? We'll open up a school on campus," or someone else may open one up, or a large church that has umpteen hundred acres may say, "We'll donate the land." So there are other ways to get this thing done.
Yeah, because I showed my audience that you have these trailers as classrooms, and they, were huge. I mean, they showed this one school that they put together. So you feel something like that would be an option as well out of trailers?
Listen, if the building were what made the school, then some of these terrible schools should be amazing, because they've spent every bit of $100 million to fail our children.
Wow.
Every bit of $100 million, $100 million on some of these schools. Go look around Texas. Y'all build a football stadium for $30 million, a high school football stadium for $30 million.
I've seen them. They full of AstroTurf and everything. They not grass or nothing. I mean, some of them look like college stadiums.
Absolutely.
Because the reason why I brought that up is because, people keep saying, okay, they say, well, we want to know the solution. So I'm asked, that's why I'm pinpointing questions about for someone who done it.
Yeah, the solutions are to give kids choice, give parents choice to pick the best school for them. You should not have to choose a one-size-fits-all school. We know that children need differentiated instruction, not just within the classroom, but from school to school. So our school is a year-round college preparatory school. We have a 2-sport requirement, social justice expectations, and some other elements that are ours. Some kids may say, "I don't want to wear a uniform." Okay, cool. That doesn't make that kid a bad kid. It just means that they're not the right fit for us. But if that child is forced to go to our school, then every single day we're going to go through this thing. "Why ain't you got black shoes on?" "Because I left them at home." Okay, we'll go home and get them then. And then the mother coming up to school, "Why are you sending my child home? He ain't got his shoes on. Y'all robbing him of education." And blah. How about this, sis? You send your child to a school that doesn't require your child to wear a uniform. And then you're going to have to get a call about this? That doesn't mean it's a bad school. You understand? I'm not saying it's a bad school. It's just not our school. We need to fight for school choice, because school choice is my choice. My child, my choice. Nobody on earth should get to pick which school my child goes to or my children go to other than my wife and me, period.
Right, because we raising these children every day. We providing for them. And why don't we have a choice in our schools? Because I've always seen with Caucasians, if their children aren't in a decent area, decent school, they'll sell a whole house and move somewhere for their kids to be in decent school.
But take it one step further, because you mentioned something. It is different for black people, especially black middle class. Stay with me on this. When we're looking for schools, because here's the decision that we have to go through. The first one is, do I want my child to go to a good school or a school with mostly black kids? Because they usually are not the same. That's just usually not the case. Unless it's a high-performing charter or high-performing magnet, most schools that are majority black are underperforming schools. That's a fact. So if you say you want your child to go to school with many African-American children, you have to hope you get into a high-performing magnet or charter, or deal with the fact that they're not going to go to a quality school. So let's say, all right, they didn't get into a high-performing magnet or charter. Your next set of options. one, pay to go to a Catholic school, but you're not Catholic, so you're sending your child to a school to learn a religion on some level or another that is not their own. There is a school in New York that's a Hebrew school that's almost majority African American, because the black parent says, you know what, I don't even care. I will learn the language. I will learn to speak Hebrew. I will learn about Judaism if it means my child getting up out of this foolishness. But let's continue. Then you have to decide, as a middle-class African-American, typically, you have to decide, all right, so now I'm sending my child to a school that doesn't teach them their religion. Or I'm sending to an exclusive private school, which is going to largely be white. Do I really want my 11, 12, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever age they are, child, to be an extreme minority in a school? Do I want that? Like, is quality so important to me that I'm prepared to have them be the only black child in the school, my daughter be the only black girl in the school? Do I feel good about that? And there is no right answer, you understand? There are only answers. And these answers that parents have to come up with all the time. I'm saying we need more options than that. We need more than either a failed urban school, hopefully you get into a charter or magnet school, or you start to send your child to a private school that is, in fact, a Catholic school or Hebrew school, but not African American, or a traditional private school that's largely white. There has to be more options. There have to be more options. The reason why there are lotteries at this point is because the way most states write their legislation is they say that if there needs to be a lottery if there are more than one child applying for one seat. So if we flooded the market with charter schools and magnet schools such that there were no more waitings, there would be no more lotteries.
A difficulty of a parent, trust me, the difficulty. Everything you just said, like I have a little one, and we're going to turn 3, and that's always in my mindset. You want to put her in a good school, but I don't really want to immerse her into an area where it's not really her culture, and then you got to deal with that aspect. I don't want her to take on a Caucasian mindset, because she's not going to grow up to be a Caucasian woman. She's going to grow up to be an African American woman. So there's a lot of things that you have to deal with. Now, some people go on the route of homeschool. What's your opinion about that?
I am a proponent of any school type that works. I'm for traditional schools, charter schools, magnet schools, online schools, home schools, not for profit, for profit, Catholic, private, and schools yet to be invented. I am for any type of school that provides a child with a quality education. All that other stuff is politics. I am an educator, so I just care that the school is the best child. I'm for big schools and small schools. Some people say big high schools are terrible, they're impersonal. Not for everybody. Some kids want to go to a 2,000 kids high school and play on the football team that has 150 players on the team, and play on the basketball team, and that has a freshman, JV, and varsity. Some people want that. And who am I to tell them that they shouldn't have it? Why shouldn't they have it? That's what you want. That's what you should have. I am for any kind of school that works. In fact, I'll share with you. There was this idea that I had for a kind of school that I call an explorer school, where kids would literally get in an RV and they would go from community to community studying certain things. So they would spend 6 weeks studying science. So they would ride around different parts of Texas and different parts of the country, lower part of the country, and literally they would study, and then they would go and see what they studied. So if they were studying Cape Canaveral, they would go to Cape Canaveral, and they would just be in it, and they would go. That's just, or they would study, and then the next unit would be on government. So then they would go and watch local government happen. They would pre-teach it. They would go. I mean, any kind of school that works. Any kind of school that works. That's the one I want. And for some kids, that would be perfect. They don't want to go to the prom. They don't want to play football. They don't want to be in the glee club. This is not interested in that. They want to go and they want to dig in the dirt and they want to look at the stars, and they want to they want to do those things. They don't want to wait till they're a grown person to do it. The point is, I'm for any kind of school that works.
And that's all parents, I feel, in our community. We want that totally. We want someone to care about our children, educate our children, and for them to have the proper opportunity. So, Dr. Perry, we definitely want to thank you for joining us today and giving us a lot of needed information that we need as parents, because a lot of times we're in the dark because we've been put in a system to controlling us about our education and not giving us any kind of choice at all. So how can people get in contact with you, Dr. Perry, if they want to ask you questions about schools or possibly they're in a position to start a school?
They go to Dr. Steve Perry at Twitter, my Twitter at Dr. Steve Perry. And I'll say this as we part. The same people who established the justice system established the school system. And how could you say you don't trust the American justice system as it relates to black people, but say that you trust the American education system as it relates to black people, when the results are literally the same, locking black people up?
That's a powerful statement that you just said, but it's the 100% true. So, Dr. Perry, thank you for joining us today, and may your new school go 1,000 times better than your previous schools.
Thank you. Pray for us.
Oh, we sure will.